Hello and welcome to Straight Talk with me, Sifiso Mahlangu. It has been a difficult week in our political periphery, but to set the record straight on Straight Talk is one of the leaders of the ANC Youth League, Mr. Sifiso Mahlangu. We have attempted many politicians tonight, even ANC MEC members. Many have confirmed coming and declined at the last minute. And indeed, it has not been an easy week for anyone in the ruling party. The opposition is in arms, cabinet ministers are jittery, but I want to find out the real story, the straight talk. Stick with us tonight. Mr. Sifiso Mahlangu, I welcome you to the show.
Thank you.
Thanks for seeing us. It has been very difficult for anyone to speak. Usually people are lining up, to talk to us, but particularly tonight, it has not been easy.
Yeah.
There's been a reshuffle in this country. We all know that. The ANC Youth League, the Young Lions, have always been the vocal force for Mr. Pravin Gordhan to go. And I want us to get into those dynamics tonight. But the minister has been recalled. He's been shuffled out. He's not the only one. There's been leaders, other ministers who have left. Do you, as the Youth League, Mr. Mahlangu, feel vindicated tonight?
No, thank you very much, and greetings to your viewers at home. Look, I think first and foremost, the ANC Youth League welcomes the cabinet reshuffle of the president. In fact, it's long overdue. The ANC Youth League has always called on President Zuma to make changes to the national executive. In particular, we're very happy that our former presidents of the ANC Youth League have been elevated. You would remember that the ANC Youth League has been vocal around the injection of younger leaders, particularly at the top level of government and the ANC. So the promotion in particular of Malusi Gigaba as the Minister of Finance is welcome news to us. The departure of Minister Gordhan is what we've been calling for a very long time. And we must applaud President Zuma actually for taking his time in taking this particular decision. But we welcome it. Mr. Pravin Gordhan, in our view, has always been a stumbling block, particularly to our agenda of radical economic transformation. We found him to be a person that represents big business. It's quite public knowledge that Mr. Gordhan has got shares in almost all the banks in South Africa. Quite recently, the Competition Commission released a report wherein it said that banks colluded, particularly on the issue of the currency of our country back then. You remember when President Zuma removed Nene, we were told that the rand went down and so on, but it has emerged that, in fact, there was a collusion to devalue the rand. But also the Competition Commission speaks about the fact that the banks actually, the cartels of the banks, have been involved in corruption, which is called collusion. Minister Gordhan has had that report, he has not acted on it. There's various policies that have been in the treasury that, in our view, has stifled particularly SMMEs from entering the market.
But Mr. Mahlangu, when the president took Mr. Nene, what South Africa calls the Nene Gate.
Yes.
Mr. Nhlanhla Nene was the finance minister.
Yes.
The president removed him and put in Mr. Des van Rooyen.
Yes.
Why did he have to remove Mr. Des van Rooyen when all this information was in the public domain? Why was Mr. Gordhan appointed in the first place then? Well,
you would remember that, in fact, the president has prerogative as given by the constitution of the country to make any changes to the national executive. Now, when the president, in fact, you can touch any department in South Africa. You can change public works, you can change sports, but the moment you touch treasury, there's a problem. In fact, that particular situation showed us that particularly big business and other interests really pressured, they devalued the currency of our country, the rand dropped. We're told that there will be a downgrade from the rating agencies and so on. Even our own internal leaders, as you can see today, our own internal leaders themselves have got their own vested interests in the treasury in particular.
Who are those leaders?
So I think it's been quite open.
Yeah, who are they? Give me the straight talk. Who are those people?
No, I think this week in particular,
yes.
in fact this weekend, over the past few days, we've seen an unprecedented move where officials of the ANC, top officials of the ANC, went publicly to contradict what the president has done. President Zuma, in addressing us in the Youth League, in fact, has made mention of the fact that when he replaced Nene with Des van Rooyen, what actually led him to change that decision was not what was said out there, but what was said internally.
You sound like you're talking about Mr. Gwede Mantashe's statement that this cabinet reshuffle was planned or documented elsewhere. It did not come from Luthuli House. But that seems to contradict what Ms. Balegambete said earlier today. The statement Ms. Jesu Duarte declared a few days ago. Is there an internal division even within the top six? Because you really sound like you're talking about Mr. Mantashe.
Look, I think we must be very clear. Comrade Gwede, immediately after the cabinet was reshuffled, was on every public platform, radio stations, in fact, distancing himself from the decision, saying that, in fact, what has happened was not consultation. But you would know that on Monday, President Zuma met officials of the ANC, met the Communist Party, where we know that he had presented this particular issue. In fact, even the day where the cabinet was to be reshuffled, he met the officials of the ANC. Now, normally, former presidents of the ANC did not even consult because the Constitution gives the president that prerogative.
So you're saying Mr. Mantashe is lying?
No, I'm not saying he's lying. I'm saying it's unprecedented for a Secretary General of the ANC to distance himself from a decision that is taken by the president who has consulted. Because Comrade Jesu Duarte and Comrade Balegambete are now telling us that there was consultation. What Comrade Mantashe and Comrade Mkhize and others are saying is that perhaps that consultation is not what they agreed with. Now, consultation by its nature does not necessarily mean we must agree. Consultation simply means I've taken you into confidence. This is what should happen in the country. And it's quite unprecedented that leaders of the ANC would behave in a manner that they've behaved. Because as young people, what do we learn? That a president, because Zuma is not only president of the country, he's the president of the ANC. He's the face of the ANC.
Does that mean then there's a division? There's factions within the top six?
Well, from the face of it, it seems to appear that as though maybe there's a difference of... Look, I don't think that as members of the ANC would ever speak publicly to say the organization is fractured, because the role of the ANC is to unite society. Now, the moment the ANC itself shows itself as a disorganized and as a disunited organization, then society itself will begin to panic. Now, I think from where we are sitting, we are saying to the Secretary General of the ANC, to the TG of the ANC, that they should have exercised the restraint. There's every Monday officials of the ANC meet. They could have gone and raised the issues there. Tomorrow there's a National Working Committee meeting that is meeting. They could have raised their issues there. We don't understand why did they have to go publicly to contradict the president of the ANC. And to us, as the ANC Youth League, were quite worried about that.
I attended the funeral of Mr. Ahmed Katada, where the former ANC president, Mr. Kgalema Motlanthe, took up and read a pretext from Mr. Katrada's open letter to President Zuma, calling upon him to step down. Mr. Motlanthe then got a standing ovation. One of the leaders of the Ahmed Katrada Foundation then asked the then Minister of Finance, Mr. Pravin Gordhan, to stand up. They gave him a standing ovation. I would want to know, Mr. Mtsweni, what does that say to you as the Youth League? Because people stood up and clapped hands there.
Look, the ANC Youth League has actually released a statement about that. When our stalwart is Talande Siaparangwe, which is the highest honor in the ANC, Comrade Katrada passed on, we thought that could have been a moment for the ANC to really talk about the role that Katrada played in the struggle, the role that Comrade Katrada and Mandela and others inspired the revolution of this country. But instead what has happened is that, in fact, first and foremost, there was an unprecedented thing. We started to hear that in funerals there's invites. Now, in African custom, funerals, there's no invites. When somebody has passed, even in your own family, even if it's somebody that you never got along with, you attend the funeral to pay your last respects. Now, that particular family and the foundation actually requested the president, who, by the way, was a comrade of Ahmed Katada, not to attend the funeral. That on its own was strange. But even the former deputy president, you know, is one person we used to respect and hold in high regard. He used to say that when political consciousness leaves you, it does not bid you farewell. Little did we know that we'll ourselves start searching for his own consciousness, because a funeral, particularly of a stalwart of that of Ahmed Katada's standing, should be used to educate, particularly ourselves as the youth, the role that Katada played. Now, to opportunistically take a letter, because one thing that South Africans are not saying, this letter was written last year. Between last year and this year, the president has actually met the veterans. You would know that there was a structure called 101 Veterans. They've met the ANC. They said they've raised their concerns, and actually they've actually suggested to the ANC that there should be a consultative conference. Comrade Katada was at the forefront of that. The ANC accepted.
So Kgalema Motlanthe is standing against President Jacob Zuma?
Well, Kgalema Motlanthe stood against President Zuma in Mangaung. That one is public knowledge.
So is this Mangaung reloaded?
In our view, it sounds very much like a hangover, because in our view, in fact, Comrade Motlanthe was given a responsibility to run political school in the ANC, which has not gotten off the ground. Now, what should we learn when Comrade Motlanthe was supposed to give us a eulogy about such a great man? He decides to go and read a letter that was written last year. He does not say that Comrade Katada met President Zuma. President Zuma conceded to some of the things that Comrade Katada and the veterans have raised. And in fact, President Zuma and the ANC have said that there should be a consultative conference where Comrade Motlanthe and others can actually come in and raise all the concerns that are there in the movement. Not to use funerals. Funerals in African customs are very sacred. They are not political bashes and festivals where people can just come in and speak as they wish. To us, it was a very regrettable situation, and I think we've expressed ourselves in a statement.
Mr. Motlanthe was not the only speaker, you know.
Yes.
Mr. Mtweni. Mr. Blinzimande took to the stage and also got quite a loud applause. But I also attended the ANC's 105th birthday, where I closely listened and attentively analyzed Mr. Nzimande's speech. It was very different from the speech he made at the funeral. I don't know, I want to question, I don't mean to make an analyst out of you tonight, but I want to question the objectivity or necessity of a communist alliance in this country. Now, I want your honest views. Are you still one with the SACP?
Well, we have always been one with the SACP. The SACP does not one with us. You would know that, in fact, almost the entire leadership structure of the SACP is in cabinet of President Zuma. President Zuma before...
they threatened to walk out, and,
yes,
they have not.
And they did not. In fact, the honest truth is that Solima Paila, in his press conference, was trying to strong arm the president, not to fire blade in Nzimande. SACP postured itself as though it's protecting Pravin Gordhan, whereas they were protecting their own interests in cabinet. When President Zuma did not remove their ministers, they did not stick to their own words of saying that when Pravin goes, they will go, they are staying. Now, in their own staying, they posture themselves almost the same way as the opposition in this country. They go further to say their own boss must resign. Now, if you cannot stand your own boss, surely the most reasonable thing for you to do is to resign yourself.
But you must admit that if the SACP left the alliance, the ANC would greatly lose, even at the polls, and even in Parliament, now that a vote of no confidence against President Zuma has been tabled by the Democratic Alliance. If in fact the SACP walked out, the ANC would be a loser.
No. I don't believe that is true. In fact, there's one thing that we must understand here. An organization that contests elections is the ANC. People vote for the ANC. Some of these comrades that are in the SACP go to Parliament as members of the ANC. They are ministers of the ANC. They are not ministers of the SACP. We are not co-governing with the SACP. The ANC is governing on its own. The Communist Party has a role that it needs to play in society. It needs to mobilize the working class, needs to mobilize the poor, take us to a socialist revolution. Now, the basis of our own alliance is based on the National Democratic Revolution, which was forged many years ago. We are joined together in struggle. We've got our own strategic objectives, which are the same. That's what makes us an alliance. We are not an alliance of convenience. We're not an alliance that was signed on paper somewhere in a conference. We are an alliance because we are bound together by struggle and what we seek to achieve. Now, if the Communist Party is saying to us that it is no longer in the route of the National Democratic Revolution and wants to stand on its own, so be it. By the way, you know, every election that takes place, majority of the people who are new voter entrants are actually young people. Now, if you look at the SACP itself, its membership, you don't see a lot of young people there. It is the ANC Youth League, it's the ANC Women's League, and the leagues of the ANC that continue to campaign for the ANC, that campaigned for Jacob Zuma.
So you're saying the SACP is futile?
I'm saying the SACP remains an alliance partner of the ANC. But if the SACP does not feel that it needs to be in the alliance anymore, I think, by the way, SACP raises this issue every time there's an conference. In 2005, in fact, as we're going to Polokwane, SACP began to have a discussion around their options of state power. They released a document called the Medium-Term Vision, wherein, in fact, unashamedly, they have said that they will contest all key sites of power, including contesting the ANC inside. Hence, you can see that most of their top leaders are in the ANC. Now, today, you hear them saying the ANC does not consult the SACP. The General Secretary of the SACP sits on the NWC of the ANC. Most of the leaders, Comrade Cronin, all of them, Comrade Sedzeni Zokwane, they are in the NEC of the ANC. Every time the ANC takes a decision, the Communist Party is there. Now, at what point does the ANC not consult the party? When President reshuffles cabinet, he met the party for a long meeting. Now, at what point? Now, to us, it's an opportunistic stance by the party. It's a stance that seeks to blackmail members of the ANC to elect comrades that are from the SACP to be the leadership of the ANC. If that does not happen, they want to go and contest elections on their own right. If they want to do so, then so be it. We'll meet on the ground. But I can tell you now, young people of this country will continue to be mobilized by the ANC Youth League, will ensure, because now there's a new scare crow now, that we are going to lose elections in 2019. There's no scientific study that shows as to why. They are
I would suggest that losing Nelson Mandela Bay, losing the city of Tshwane, losing the Western Cape, losing the city of Johannesburg would be an attest to the fact that you are slowly dwindling on voters.
That cannot be scientific. You know, people sometimes, when they talk, we must also make a research.
Mr. Mtsweni, the city of Joburg and the city of Tshwane, Nelson Mandela Bay, the city of Cape Town, are not under the ANC.
I'm trying to respond to that. I'm saying to you, local government elections and national and provincial government elections are not the same. For instance, let me make an example. In Nelson Mandela Bay, there has not been an ANC structure for the last 3 to 4 years. We even had to go and take SAFA President Denny Jordan to go there and become a mayor of the ANC in order to stabilize the situation. So right there are ground issues that are affecting those things. In Tshwane, in particular, there were many people who are supporting Sputla, for instance, to come back as a mayor. Others supported the deputy chairperson of Tshwane to become a mayor. The ANC, in its own wisdom, decided to take Comrade Thoko Titiza, who was unknown in Tshwane, and make Comrade Thoko Titiza a mayoral candidate of Tshwane. That's how we actually got to lose Tshwane, because many people said no Sputla, no vote. They did not say President Zuma is the ANC of the ANC, or is the president of the ANC, who are not going to vote. So I'm saying, when we do these things, let's make a scientific analysis. In fact, the ANC itself, after elections, realized that most of the councillors that are there on the ground are not the choice of the people. Now, normally, when a person sees a councillor is not the person that we want, people rather stay away. By the way, the ANC, the reason why we actually lose these metros is not because people voted against the ANC. It's because some people withdrew their votes. Now, what we need to be doing as the ANC now moving forward is to go back to those people and say, here's the program of the ANC. This is how we are going to take the country forward. Just yesterday, President Zuma launched the biggest housing project in South Africa, in Pietermaritzburg. The good story of the ANC continues to perpetuate. Whilst people in these television stations, in newspapers cry every day, President Zuma is on the ground, he's loved by the masses, he continues to be welcomed. So,
Mr. Mtsweni, you are aware that the DA attempted to interdict President Zuma from swearing in his new cabinet, the ministers. They didn't win that in the Western Cape High Court. But now they've pursued or are pursuing a vote of no confidence against President Zuma. Doesn't that scare you? that perhaps this vote of no confidence will go through, considering Mr. Julius Malema's statement in the last week that he's mobilized and mobilizing ANC members of parliament to vote against President Zuma in the next attempt for a vote of no confidence?
Look, I think we've come to accept, and society in general has come to accept, that Julius is a gossip monger. He's a person who can just call a press conference to share gossip with South Africa. Now, there's one thing that we want to say. The Democratic Alliance has no program in parliament other than these frivolous votes of no confidence, which have failed, all of them. Now, even this one, there's nothing different, it's going to fail. Now, there's one thing that we want to make very clear. Those members of parliament represent the African National Congress. Their mandate is from the African, they don't represent their own jackets. They don't go there and vote out of their own conscience.
The DA is calling a march against President Zuma. And Mr. Mmusi Maimane made a press conference a few hours ago and said he was calling for the biggest march you've ever seen to march against President Zuma, for him to finally step down. Well,
the DA has been trying those particular things. I think what DA calls the biggest march is just a few hundred people that they can claim to mobilize. But we want to say it here today. We want to warn Mmusi Maimane in particular. He must stay away from Luthuli House. The former leader of the DA youth once warned Helen Zille about the attempts to march to Luthuli House, because once you march to Luthuli House, you are coming to our home. And we are not going to be responsible to what we are going to do to
If he marches to the union buildings?
If he marches to he's welcome to do that. The South African National Defence Force and the police will protect its own buildings. The union buildings belongs to all South Africans. It's not Luthuli House. But the moment you come to Luthuli House, you are going to find us waiting there. And we want to advise him. We want to advise the DA, it must stay away from Luthuli House. That one is our private property. The moment you come into my private property, trespassers will not be allowed. We are going to deal with them the manner in which they will deserve to be dealt with. The ANC Youth League will be at Luthuli House and it will wait for them. If they think that they can organize big matches, we are going to organize triple the size that they think that they can mobilize, and they will find us waiting.
I think this country might come to a revolt from what Mr. Maimane is saying and what from you, Mr. Mthweni, is saying. Shouldn't you sit down as leaders? I think you are calling for a national revolt from what you are saying.
No, I'm not calling for the national revolt. Mmusi Maimane calls a press conference, tells South Africans that a democratic alliance, a small party of official opposition in this country, which does not enjoy more than 23% of the electorate, tells South Africa that they are going to march to headquarters of an organization that enjoys 64% electorate support of South Africans. Now, where do they get off to come and march to a private property? Let them go to union buildings. That's fine. But if they come to our private property, we are not instigating here. It's Mmusi Maimane that is instigating. If Mmusi Maimane wants to sit down with the leadership of the ANC, Mmusi Maimane must sit down with the leadership of the ANC. Mmusi Maimane must not call cameras and threaten to come to our private property. He's going to find us waiting for him there.
Mr. Mthweni, those are very delicate threats.
No, we're not threatening. No.
But moving on. It seems Mr. Gordhan is enjoying the company of people like Mr. Sipho Pichana, Mr. Zwelinzima Vavi. I would be concerned when Mr. Zwelinzima Vavi, who used to be such a credible leader in this country, leading COSATU, stands behind Mr. Pravin Gordhan. We've seen Mr. Aaron Motsoaledi take the side of Mr. Pravin Gordhan. Doesn't that say that the factions have become too many in the party?
Well, first and foremost, Vavi is not, in our view, is not a member of the ANC. He's went out, they started something called United Front, and some small trade union that cannot get off the ground. Now, when you align yourself with non-members of the ANC, that's not factionalism. You are aligning yourself with people outside of the ANC. Sipho Pichana and his Save South Africa, they are just a bunch of CEOs, by the way, who are part of the crisis that this country continues to face. We are talking about youth unemployment in particular. Government is the biggest employer in South Africa. Those CEOs of Save South Africa are not employing people in this country. They are part of the banking cartel that continues to collude and devalue our currency. They are corrupt. They are colluding everything. Now, Pichana must go and fix his own membership there and ensure that CEOs that are members of Save South Africa actually employ young people in this particular country. Now, when Comrade Kotan, by the way, who's a member of the NEC, who's a leader of the ANC that we respect, but the moment he aligns himself with members that are not members of the ANC, to us, we become very, very concerned.
Mr. Mtsweni, it has to be my last question.
Yes.
Time is always my enemy. I hope you'll come back and talk to me some more.
Yes.
Well, you've heard it for yourself, South Africa. The struggle continues, as many say. We pray for peace and social cohesion in this country as the battle for economic freedom and radical economic empowerment continues in our lifetime. I am Sifiso Mahlangu. Pray for South Africa. Join me next time. See you soon.